Hey everyone, welcome back. I wanted to have a quick chat with you all about the ongoing negotiations over the US debt ceiling and national budget. Now, over the last 2 weeks, we have received two new pieces of information, one from Moody's Analytics and the other from the Congressional Budget Office. The CBO has released an assessment regarding how much of the remaining federal budget the Republicans would have to cut in order to balance the budget over the next 10 years, and Moody's Analytics has produced an assessment predicting what might happen if Republicans succeed in making these cuts, as well as what might happen if the U.S. has a short or long-term default on its debts. So I would like to take a little bit of time and look at these two pieces of information and assess how they might impact the negotiations going forward. Let's start off with the Congressional Budget Office's report. In it, the CBO stated that if Republicans wanted to keep their promises and not make any cuts to Medicare, Social Security, defense spending, and VA benefits, then they could cut 100% of all the remaining federal spending and still not balance the budget over the next 10 years. And let's face it, that would mean cutting a lot of programs that are popular on both the left and right. There'd be no federal money for infrastructure, no federal money for state and local law enforcement, no funding for agricultural subsidies, no money for border security. All of that would be gone. And obviously, you can imagine that that's going to have a really significant impact on the economy. Moody's Analytics put out a report stating that if Republicans managed to make these cuts, then we would be looking at losing approximately 2.5 million jobs, and the U.S. economy would enter a moderate recession over the next couple of years. Obviously, those two pieces of information are inconvenient for House Republicans as it completely undermines their policy position. However, I'm sure that there are plenty of House Republicans that still want to at least try and make some of these cuts, so they're going to continue holding the U.S. debt ceiling hostage for a time. And Moody's Analytics went on to discuss what might happen if the U.S. had a short or long-term default. In the short-term default situation, you would see the loss of about 1 million jobs and a mild recession. But if there is a long-term default and an agreement can't be reached, then we're looking at something in the neighborhood of 7 million jobs and what would amount to a global economic catastrophe. So obviously, none of these are ideal outcomes. But it is interesting to note here that it would actually be preferable for the U.S. to have a short-term default than to implement the budget cuts that Republicans want to make, because in the short-term default setting, we're only losing 1 million jobs, whereas in the Republican cuts, we lose 2.5 and enter a more severe recession. So how does all of this impact the ongoing negotiations? Well, essentially, they're over and President Joe Biden has won, as the House Republicans have gotten themselves into a lose-lose situation. Obviously, their policy isn't very good, so it's not even likely to appeal to a majority of House Republicans, let alone anyone in the Senate, and it certainly won't be signed by President Biden. So, if the House Republicans decide to stick to their guns and cause a U.S. default, we're going to see the loss of millions of jobs and a general economic recession, if not worse. And it would be very easy to lay the blame for all of that at the feet of the Republicans, as they were the ones who were unwilling to raise the debt ceiling. So, that's going to be a very easy argument for Democrats to make in 2024. But if by some miracle the Republicans actually manage to force through the budget cuts that they want, then there would also be an economic catastrophe, and it would also be laid right at the feet of House Republicans. So either way, they're going to suffer in the 2024 elections, and the Democratic attack ads would essentially right themselves. So how is this all going to play out? Well, if Republicans want to do well in 2024, they obviously can't let either of these two outcomes occur. So, they're likely to default to a tried and true Republican tactic of say a lot of things that we have no intention of doing. See repeal and replace Obamacare. In the Senate, Democrats will propose a bill that would raise the debt ceiling with no mandatory cuts or other strings attached, and it will pass in a party line vote with all Republicans voting against it. However, they will not filibuster it, which will allow it to move over to the House of Representatives. Now, once it gets to the House, Kevin McCarthy will likely say something to the effect of, I think we need to cut more spending, this is irresponsible, I'm not going to bring this up for a vote on the floor. Then behind the scenes, he's going to go to several House Republicans who won in swing districts where President Biden won in 2020 and say, hey, we need this to pass, but I can't allow the vote on it because, that would anger our base, it could cost me the speakership, and it could cost us a lot in primaries. So, what I need you all to do is to go over, join with the Democrats, and form a majority to force a floor vote on this issue That way it can pass, and most Republicans can still vote against it and blame everything on the Democrats. Now, yes, you might get called rhinos, and you'll probably face a primary challenge, but I only agreed to stay out of open primaries. So I will be able to put some money behind you, and will help get you through the primary, so don't worry about that. And just like that, Democrats and a small number of Republicans will vote to override the Speaker of the House and force a vote on the bill. The bill will pass with that very narrow majority, and then President Biden will sign it, and the U.S. debt ceiling will be raised, just like that. Now, obviously, this only gets the U.S. past its short-term crisis regarding a potential default on its national debt. There will still be other debates and discussions regarding passing the budget, and those negotiations will come with their own issues, including the threat of a government shutdown. But that's a little bit farther in the future, and circumstances may change between now and then. But for now, at least, it seems like the Republicans' main economic policy position is, if you don't let us blow up the U.S. economy, we will blow up the U.S. economy. Think about it.